Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today. Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the about to be a huge sort of front page issue of remigration or illegal alien repatriation, call it what you like, that's hopefully, and we can only hope, is about to explode across North America starting in a few days' time. Now, I guess we need to look at this from a number of angles. There are those who believe that if people en masse have arrived in the country, be it the United States or any other Western country, because they only want to come to rich Western countries, if they've arrived en masse, then illegally, then they should be repatriated back to their homelands, back to where their wider families are, where their tribes are, where their tribal villages are. They've lived in, they should be repatriated back, given a free ticket. Here's the plane ticket, off you go. And that's not only just, reasonable and humane. They can be with their own people, with their own cultures, their own language, their own religions. What's wrong with that, you would say? Now, on the other side, the pro-globalist fanatics and ideologues, they see things a little differently. And if you go on to, say, Wikipedia or really any of the globalist-controlled sort of mainstream propaganda delivery systems in the media, then they'll say, well, remigration is the province of the far right, and it's fascistic, it's Nazi, it's Hitler, and then they'll go straight to the Holocaust and say that the equivalent of sending an illegal, a criminal back to Mexico from the US, that's it. It's the Holocaust. It's the Holocaust. So they certainly jump around with their dramatic depictions of, if A, then we don't go to B, C, D, E. We go straight to Z from A. And it's pretty laughable, the misrepresentation of the reality. But nonetheless, let's have a look at it. And I guess looking at the United States primarily, I'm a big supporter of remigration. If anyone's arrived illegally, including their children, then they should go back to their homeland. Now, if you look at the amount of people from South America that even 20, 30 years on, they barely speak a word of English. Their children that were illegally born in the United States still speak with a thick Spanish accent. It doesn't look like they're integrating very well. So, and the wider issue here is integration and assimilation, not just cheap slave labor. So now some people have been sending me information about the numbers of illegals in the United States, and there were supposed to be 11 million illegals, but this number stayed absolutely constant for nearly 10 years. So clearly that's a nonsense number that the pro-globalist administration puts about. So, it's not a big deal. There's only a few million. Who cares? They can easily be taken care of, when in reality the number is much greater. So the more accurate number of illegal alien adults that were in the United States, in 2015 excuse me, 2019 was 23 million, plus their children. And you're looking at somewhere in the order of 9 to 11 million have come in during the Biden administration, or illegal totals, again, not including minor children. And so you're looking at closer to 35 million all up. I thought initially 35 million adult illegals was really stretching it a bit, but it's probably not far off. Then when it's added in the number of minor children they've had, some of which were brought with them, some born in the United States illegally, then the number overall, if we look at the total sort of illegal diaspora, it's going to be somewhere around 60 million. Now, the logistics of sort of sending those people back to their country's origin are huge, and even though the expense would be great, it still would be cheaper than keeping them in the United States. So, majority of them don't work. Majority of them have, almost no worthwhile education. Sure, they get affirmative action degrees in Spanish, Spanish victimhood studies or something, but that's not a qualification that's worth anything. So the cost of keeping them in the United States is greater than any possible benefit that could be derived, given the amount of them that are unemployed and have always been unemployed, work as casual labourers, or the amount of them that have no skills or have serious health issues, all these sorts of things. So they end up not getting they can't be employed or usefully employed. No matter how much they make, if they do make any money as labourers or burger flippers, then they're still entitled to food stamps and numerous handouts such as free medical care and so on. So why is this illegal alien any help or use for the society? Now remember, if they went to another third world country, who cares? But they're going from third world peasant to first world advanced economy, and that's part of the rub here. How do third world illiterate peasants fit into an advanced first world economy? That's one of the wider issues here. Now, coming back to, quite apart from how many may or may not be useful or work employed in creating some sort of a surplus rather than consuming resources in the West, there'd be very few that are contributing. Out of the 60, out of say 35 million adults, if even a million, and that would be generous, if even a million are contributing positively, that is, the taxes they pay are greater than the weight or the draw they pay, the drawdowns they take from the welfare system, then it would be a very, very small number. So this idea that if the illegals are sent back, then no work will ever get done, no burger will ever get flipped, and no Amazon delivery will ever occur, that's nonsense, absolute nonsense, and can be dismissed out of hand. Coming to the deportations, there are some key, a number of key things that why do Indians and our subcontinent people in such vast numbers gag to come to the West? Well, it's the work. But if you say to them, well, no more arranged marriages, no more marrying no more bringing a bride or a husband in from the village of your ancestors, that's all, you've got to marry a local citizen, has been a citizen for, born in the United States. That's it. That's the deal, buddy. If you want to come, then they wouldn't come, because arranged marriages, from the village of the tribe of the ancestors is absolutely front and center in their worldview. If you deny them that, they simply won't come to the West, and they won't, and they'll leave as quickly as they can. That's something they desperately must hang on to. So that's one way of getting people to self-deport. So I think self-deporting is going to be a big issue. The same with the Mexicans and the South Americans. They're very many, not all, many of them are very close to this idea of marrying someone from the village. Part of this is, well, apart from it's their custom and habit, but some of this also is the big noting. Hey, I'm in the West and I'm doing well, and I can offer you a marriage partner arrangement, which means then your relatives, your cousins, aunts, and uncles could come to the West. So it's something that everyone gags and falls over themselves to get. So if you stop chain migration, that would be another reason that would be another taking away of incentives for people to come to the West or to stay. So if you can't bring into the West your cousins, aunts, and uncles, and third cousins, and all this thing, which these tribal, peasant societies do. The village is very communal. Everyone owns everything together in the village. So why can't you own citizenship to the US or residence in you? Why can't you own that as well? So they see that as something that can be communally owned in the same way that you communally own the food that you eat that day. So if you take away arranged marriages, if you take away chain migration, then huge incentives for the third world rest just in those two areas. So take those away, then not only will you see people not wanting to come to the US, but they won't want to stay. And there are Indians that I know where they're where again they've got the arranged marriage from the village of the ancestors, and that so they have children in Australia, and they say no, we want our children to get husbands and brides from the village of our ancestors. That purity of culture, that purity of genetics is something they put a very, very high premium on. So if you deny that to them, again, they won't want to come and they won't want to stay. So that would create a massive that would also affect very much the Arabic societies as well. Now, if you restricted, so well, you can practice, your religion in your home, like Islam, that's your business. You can have a private shrine in your home, and that's okay. Nothing wrong with that, freedom of worship. But the idea that your religion and your Sharia law or anything should have any place in the Western society, then it won't and doesn't and can't, and we won't let it. Then again, there would be large mass deportations, self deportation would occur just on that. So just with some minor, tinkering around the edges, there could be a huge amount of work and success done. Another thing, certainly the South Americans or others, do, is they like to send money back home to their wider families. So, and if you say that was taxed heavily, 50% tax, if they're making money in the US, you want the money spent in the US or in the West. This idea they make money and then send it offshore, then that doesn't help the US at all. That means there's less consumption in the US relative to any income that might be earned. So they're sending money back to their relatives in the third world and then claiming food stamp benefits in the US. So the US tax system and welfare system is subsidizing their sending of money back to their relatives in wherever in the third world. So tax that heavily or prevent it altogether. And again, a lot of incentive to come to the US or to stay would be gone. Now, my estimation, given the amount of people that have these arranged marriages thing, that there could be as much as 70% self-deportation just by enforcing those things. Now, for the people that fall outside of that, there, in my view, should be enforcement of legal wages. So people doing fruit picking, for example, or burger flipping through these sham labour hire organisations, they get their accommodation and food and the work all packaged up in one deal, which means their income is $100 a week, or not even that, $50 a week, and the rest of their supposed salary is paid in again food and accommodation that is owned by the scam labour hire firm, which is in itself a real estate property speculator. So the scam goes sort of vertically and horizontally here, and if these things were clamped down on, they could again, there would be a mass disincentive to stay and mass disincentive to come, or for these scams to exist in the first place. So this takes care of a lot of it. Moving on to now the legal side, if we say out of 35 million adults, approximately 20 million are working in some form, whether it's a few hours a week as labourers or burger flippers or fruit pickers or whatever it might be. If we look at that, they're all employed illegally. So they're either under the table illegal labour hire scams, which I mentioned a moment ago, or they've stolen social security numbers or made up fictitious ones or whatever, stolen someone else's, taken a dead person's social security number, and the list goes on. And some organisations are quite brazen. Their human resource department isn't actually an HR department. It's a professional scam producing, social welfare tax file number producing outfit that hires illegals and fabricates all the documents and needed to hire them. So in an effort to escape governmental scrutiny. So that needs to be beefed up quite considerably. And if that was done, because it's obviously illegal to fabricate social security numbers and the like, So that's sufficient requirement. Or again, there's a mass industry of giving fake driver's licenses and fake other government documents and so on. There's a mass industry there. A lot of the American authorities, US authorities, globalist controlled and infiltrated. They just look the other way and pretend it's not happening. But if that was clamped down on, there would again be numerous instances, as in the millions, where that illegality could be used as a basis for not the one to be needed. They're in the country illegally anyway, but as an additional crime. So, and then they could be deported on that basis. Now, how do we know these people won't come back in again? So there needs to be quite a rigorous sort of fingerprinting and, all sorts of things that are done there to keep records of these people, as they will likely reoffend and want to try and come back in. But if there's a severe clamping, heavy fines for organisations hiring illegals, then this could also be dealt with through there. In terms of criminals that are operating sort of outside the system, then the mass deportation and the raids will be necessary to. They tend to live in their own diaspora, because that's how they can sort of disappear into the Latino, Hispanic sort of areas. So there'll need to be raids to get that. It's kind of unavoidable. Now, coming to the matter of children that have been born in the US from illegals, this comes back to the anchor baby chain migration thing. That this can't be, if you're here illegally in the United States or the West generally, just being born in the US or the West must not confer upon anyone's citizenship or any legal status. So that needs to be, I think, clamped down on very hard and removed. This anchor baby thing for illegals, doesn't apply. Nor can people just turn up pregnant, which they do from these third world countries, and are advised to do this by the people traffickers and the NGOs and the globalist people movement infrastructure. Try and come pregnant, so then you give birth to you give birth 5 minutes after crossing the border. Bingo, you've got an anchor baby, and they're encouraged to take this view. They even do that when they don't need to. People that come to Australia as getting a residency visa, this sort of thing, they procreate as quickly as they can, and they perceive that gives them security that they won't be deported. So anyhow, the anchor baby thing and the chain migration needs to go. So if you just do these things, which aren't, I would think, massive steps in any direction, then they will have a huge knock-on effect. Now you can add things to, like, you're 10 years in the country before you can apply for any sort of government or receive any sort of government handout, whether it be food stamps or free attendance at school or medical care or anything like that. And anyone that does apply is in themselves breaking the law and will be deported and so on. So let's suppose these 60 million, again, many being children, but let's suppose these 30 plus million adults are all deported tomorrow, for example. Now, firstly, not much more than half of them are working, and the work they do is either casual or non-viable jobs, jobs for businesses that couldn't exist without the law breaking and the scams of scam labour hire outfits and so on. So it's entry-level labouring, which anyone can do. It's nor are these people particularly fit. I've gone past American building sites where they've got all these Hispanic labourers. Some of them are seriously overweight and can seem to barely move. I don't know what work they do or for how long they can do it when they're in that physical shape. Nor are they young. They're people in their 40s from the looks of it. And again, not in very good health. So how many workers are being denied the economy? And they're existing in businesses that aren't viable. I mean, if the only way your business can exist is by paying people 1/10 of what they're supposed to be paid, then it's not a viable business. Go and do something else. So we've got huge areas in the economy of non-viable business that are only kept alive through this importation of peasant illiterate slave labor. That's not an economy. That's not an advanced first world economy. It's bullshit. And it's better if there's a readjustment, a realignment around competitive industries and services in a competitive first world advanced technical economy, for goodness sakes. So that would be a good thing, the readjustments around that. Some mass repatriation. Some mass repatriation, I think, needs to happen. Now, I guess, unfortunately, a lot of as soon as mass repatriation of illegals and so on is mentioned, again, the activists, many of them are Jewish, jump straight to the Holocaust on this one. It's, again, putting a Mexican back across the border to Mexico, Hitler, and they see it as being, this is it. This opens the door to the Hitler of today and tomorrow, and which is of course insane and utterly ridiculous. But it's something they jump to, with with astonishing rapidity and with cocaine-induced fevered imagination. But this needs to be sort of stared down, because it's a ridiculous and absurd parallel that's being drawn. Now, if people want to migrate to the US or the West, legally and meet a standard, a high standard of needed people in the economy, then the numbers will be very small. In Australia, the government says, we only bring people in to speak really good English. I mean, that's bullshit. I mean, there are people by the gazillion coming into Australia that can't even speak one word of English. And so we're told these terrible lies by globalist controlled Western governments, and the scams and the workarounds and the get-arounds are just legion. And so most of the people coming into the Australian government even concedes this, that less than 5% of all the migrants are actually of any use whatsoever to the economy. So that'll give you an idea of just how small the numbers are. So, in the case of the United States, 10 million or so illegals came in over the last 4 years. You'd be lucky if even a few 100,000 were of any use at all in the economy. But they could easily be replaced by American citizens being paid proper wages, and with it. And if you look at the farms, certainly farmers in Australia that I know, they say, well, why should I invest in efficiency through special harvesting machines and special machinery and more tractors and that sort of stuff? Why should I invest in any of that when I can hire people for pennies on the hour to pick the fruit for me? Why would I do that? So people are not, businesses, whether they be farmers or corner or burger stores or something like that, they can't be bothered investing in and being efficient and effective in what they do when they've got access to so much peasant slave labor. And so when that peasant slave labor is removed, you will create efficiencies in the economy that are much needed. So for mine at least, I believe mass repatriation and mass migration of illegals, criminals, and so on should take place, and it'll be a good thing. You've been a Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.